Hey there and welcome. My name is Pete and this is the first channel update of 2024, but I'll use it to talk both about the end of last year as well as about the beginning and the near future of this one. And let's begin, as we usually do, by taking a look back. Now, I don't want us to go through the entire year of 2023 month by month, so let me instead try to summarize the year as best as I can. 2023 was not always a great year for me, at least not in the first half. I have talked about my mental health struggles a few times before, so I don't want to go into too much detail again here, especially because I also feel like I have made a lot of progress since I started therapy, which was pretty much exactly 1 year ago. Still, in the first few months of last year, I wasn't really able to record as much as I would have liked, and to be honest, the channel suffered a bit as a result. YouTube is just merciless when it comes to creators taking time off, and it took me quite a while to get things back to a level that I'm somewhat happy with. This is also why I am very thankful to have a Patreon where some of you guys support me. Don't get me wrong, even my Patreon does eventually also reflect the performance of the channel, but it is a lot more robust, if you will, and I am extremely grateful for that. This whole YouTube thing is, after all, how I earn at least a part of my living, so as much as I would sometimes prefer not to do it, I have to keep an eye on these things. Now, me and the channel definitely got better in the second half of 2023, in part also because we launched a new RimWorld series, but I'd like to believe much more so because I finally got back to having a somewhat regular schedule with at least 2 videos per week. And at the moment, that is a perfect level of output for me. RimWorld tends to be a bit more work-intensive at times, but overall I am currently achieving my goal to no longer do any significant amount of work on the weekend. Speaking of RimWorld, by the way, I am actually somewhat surprised to see RimWorld not perform as well as I had perhaps hoped it would. At the moment, the series is actually regularly beaten by XCOM, which just surpassed its 50th episode. In part, I think that is because the RimWorld series did have a bit of a slow start, because with the Guilty meme you are very much at the mercy of the storyteller feeding you events that you can use to put that meme into action. I do feel like it is kicking into gear a bit more now, and my personal excitement to record new episodes somewhat reflects that. The last 2 episodes in particular were just chock full of pretty interesting story developments, and I'm looking forward to see where the journey goes from here. Now, before we set our sights entirely on the future, I would like to take one last look back at 2023, not to talk about things that happened on the channel, but specifically to talk about those games that left an impression and that I haven't had the time to cover. And we begin with 3 games that I actually wanted to make at least a short video on, but never found the time to do so, starting with Miasma Chronicles. You may have heard of this one. It is from the makers of Mutant Year Zero, a game that is actually still among my favorite series on this entire channel, and well, Miasma Chronicles hits a lot of those same spots. As a result, I had a lot of fun with it, but also I did not finish it. I just never really got completely hooked by the story, and overall I liked both the story and characters of Mutant Year Zero a bit more. Don't get me wrong, it is still a very solid game, and gameplay-wise it feels very similar to Mutant Year Zero, but as much as I am a sucker for great tactical turn-based games, for me they need to have a bit more than just good combat mechanics, and Miasma Chronicles always felt like a step behind Mutant Year Zero, which for better or worse will always be the game I compared against. Still, I realize that story and characters are very much a subjective preference, so don't let me stop you from giving it a try. It is most definitely a very solid tactical turn-based combat game. The second game on my list is Every Day We Fight. I am actually not entirely sure how popular this game was, or is at the moment, but you may have heard of it through Christopher Odd, a fellow YouTuber who is actually involved in the game's development process. It is another tactical turn-based combat game, and with this one I am eagerly awaiting the full release. It has a few innovative ideas that I have not yet seen in other games of this kind, for example taking direct control of a soldier in first-person mode during combat. But again, it is an early access game, and at the moment I just don't have the capacity to regularly keep tabs on the project to assess all of the changes and improvements, so I think I'll wait for the full release, and who knows, maybe I will cover it then. Similarly to Every Day We Fight, I also played Shardpunk a while back, and quite a few things have been added since then, but what I played was a fun mix of tactical turn-based combat and roguelike mechanics. And even though this one is already fully released, it still gets regular updates, including smaller gameplay and balancing adjustments, but even without those, the replay value is pretty high thanks to the aforementioned roguelike elements. I have a decent number of hours in it already, and actually also wrote about a quarter of a script for a brief getting started guide, but I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure if and when I'm ever going to finish that. Still, it's a neat game and one where I see a lot of potential for future content, so I'll definitely keep an eye on it. Another game that I played on and off for the last few months is War Tales. Surprise, surprise, it is another turn-based combat game, this one however with a much heavier focus on party management. There are quite a few games like it out there, Battle Brothers comes to mind for example, but I haven't played any of them, so I can't really say that War Tales does any of the things it does better than them. What I can say, however, is that while combat is definitely the focus of the game, it adds an interesting open world that is not entirely unlike Mount and Blade, the art style is just lovely in my opinion, and there is a whole lot to do, even if there is no grand overarching storyline. Basically, you make your own story, and it might take a while to get the hang of it all, especially on higher difficulties, but once you do, you can sink hundreds of hours into this game. And that is also true for this last entry on my list. What else could it be but Baldur's Gate 3? However, calling this one another turn-based combat game feels like the understatement of the year, very much like Baldur's Gate was my personal game of the year in 2023. I already talked quite a bit about it in the last channel update video, but seriously, if you're even remotely interested in role-playing games, fantasy or D&D, do yourself a favor and play this game. Or wait a little while longer, because I do have something in the making for this one. I'm not going to spoil what exactly just yet, but I hope to be able to release it at some point this month. And with that, not only can you see a pretty clear preference for the type of game that intrigued me last year, but we can now also briefly talk about what to expect from the channel in 2024. There will be some changes, but mostly behind the scenes. I'll keep you updated on that once I feel confident to say more. But apart from that, it's going to be business as usual, at least for the time being. XCOM will most likely end sooner or later, and so will RimWorld. I am aiming for about 25 to 30 episodes with that one. And while I am definitely not privy to any inside information, we might also get another RimWorld expansion just in time for part 3 of our journey to the Arconexus. Who knows? Overall, I am very excited for 2024, not only because I feel much better myself, but also because the gaming landscape looks very healthy to me at the moment. Lots of fun games out there, and if I had the time, I would love to cover them all, and I'm sure we'll have more great releases this year. And I would really like to go a bit beyond that in terms of plans for this year, but some of the things I would like to talk about are still not really fully agreed upon, and I don't want to make any promises I cannot keep. Suffice it to say, there are one or two cool announcements probably coming at some point in 2024, and I'm very much looking forward to another great year with all of you guys. Speaking of you, before we wrap things up for today, we do of course have one more thing to get to, and that is to give a big shout out to all of the new Patreon supporters who have joined since the last channel update video. So, without any further ado, a big thank you goes out to Dr. McKay, Zhang, Alex Perovich, Inderox, Will Helmick, X-Kaises, The Honey Butter, Mule, Bins, Paul Pickett, Coveras, Barry, Amandum, Jack Life Fears, Soup RP, Gotus, Sufike, Krilli, Fishin, Felix Kamalander, Soulflayer, Skark, Ketevan, Gurking, Ulfgar, Elva, Coach Den, Alexair, Chris Williams, Fenris Wolfer, Corinna Röser, Countess Rotona, T. Reimer, Jay Vetters, Wheezy, Timay, Kenton, Oliver, Bradley Apps, Graham Greybeard Dugan, Mikhail Poppyzeel, Zoltan Gal, Tim Planschwitzer, Zuckerboom, Jared Horton, Amsu the Mighty, Billy Green, Elpis, Viscalair, Christoph, Granola Fan, Kalanur, Loop Monkey, The Giant Mimir, Mookie, Jacob Davis, Ocarina 0001, Swiss Hackmod, Emeril Wren, Atlas, Linda, Rail Sage, Ariel, Joe Durant, Lizard Twister, Till Burner, Elite Garby, Straw, Q-Dog, Eins, Embarrassed Skunk, and Iron Zombie Jesus. As always, I hope I pronounced all of your names correctly, but above all, thank you all so much for your generous support. And with that, we have reached the end of today's channel update video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can of course go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or check out and maybe even pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.